OpenSRS was from launch about wholesale domain registration. So it was really through the decade, the knots, that we started to layer some additional services into it. But when we launched OpenSRS, it was really driven by wholesale domain registration. In fact, the first genesis of us doing wholesale domain registration was to try and provide something else to our ISP partners who hosted our software libraries on the old Tucows.com site. We really, in one sense, got into domain registration by accident. In other words, we weren't thinking about domains, we were thinking about service providers. In another sense, it was as natural for us as falling off a log, because we uniquely had a deep sense that it wasn't registrars or registries that sold domain names. It was ISPs and web hosting companies. Today it's predominantly web hosting companies. Back then it was a little bit more so ISPs than domains. Sure. I think what's most unique really for us is we don't believe there's anybody else in the industry who really has, can stand up and say, hey, the most important thing to our company is service provider partners. We like to think we're best in the world at understanding, the businesses and the business needs of service providers, and it's really what drives us. I think that, obviously we have some large competitors, but, I think at kind of a company focus level, what do we get up every day and live and breathe? I think it's that focus on service providers that sets us apart. A lot of there's almost a bit of irony, a lot of the places where we're most hands-off is actually what I would call cultural artifact. So first of all, there's a couple places where we really take a step back, and what we've come to learn is it's almost to the detriment of our partners in some ways. But where it comes from is when we invented wholesale domain registration, we had no idea whether we were going to get stopped or not. We had no idea whether ICANN at the time, or potentially Network Solutions / VeriSign would try and sue us out of existence or regulate us out of existence. We knew what we were doing was sort of clean and straightforward, but we also knew that it was so out of the box relative to what the industry was doing at the time, and we had a lot of fear. So we bent over backwards, to make sure that we kind of ran a clean shop and stayed in the background. I think net it's paid off. Like anything, you come by, where you end up very circuitously. I think that first of all, we do partner and offer some other things. We're VeriSign's largest wholesale partner for SSL. There's a couple other small pieces, but I think more than anything else, there's my belief, company belief, that the internet is hyper competitive, and that focus is just so important. And it's very hard to be good at more than one or two things. We really have a view that as a company, we certainly think that we can be a lot bigger than we are in the future. But when we think about bigger, we think about that in terms of footprint and revenue and profits. We don't think about that in terms of people. We talk about wanting to be the biggest 200-person company in the world, so I think that's really, outside of anything that's kind of service specific, domain registration specific. I think that's just what we believe about the internet and about internet-related businesses.
Right.
The domains business is great in that it feels like a new business every year.
Right.
I could go through the last 10 years, and boy, I could, create a timeline where I mark, each year, you have the launch of competition, you have the launch of the first new TLDs, you have a few other seminal events. You have the GoDaddy Super Bowl commercial, and GoDaddy coming from nowhere to a position of near dominance through the middle part of the decade. You have then really the invention and reinvention again of the secondary market. I mean, the secondary market in and of itself changes on an annual basis. So what you see, I think, over time is markets, then sub-markets developing, and then even specialties inside of those sub-markets. It's that that hyper-competitive need, hyper-focus, but it just keeps changing. And I'm sure that next year, in the coming year, there certainly are a couple interesting smaller launches, but then it'll be maybe another 18 months till new TLDs, the broad new generic TLD process, which is going to reinvent this business again. I'll come at that a couple ways. First of all, there are a couple things that I deeply believe about the new TLD process. More importantly, I'm very comfortable saying I know as much about that as anybody in the world, and I think about the impact of new gTLDs on markets, and the domains market in particular, more than very, very few people. And I can tell you that, I don't know. There's just right. So much that I'm sure we're just going to have to see at game time. Right. But the couple things that are pretty clear to me. First of all, that this will have a real sense of underperformance for the first year or two, and then it's going to vastly exceed expectations. I mean, that's what we see in a lot of the hype curves, certainly. I think with new TLDs, it'll be even more extreme, because I think that this is a fundamental change to the namespace. Bringing semantics to the right of the dot is just going to change the way that people use domains. It's going to change the way that people navigate. It's going to change the relationship of direct navigation relative to search. It's going to change what a registry means. So, there's so much that will be impactful there. And then, at a deeper level, there's so much that we can't possibly know.